Hey everybody, welcome to In the Red Zone. I'm Mike, this is Shaun, and this is time for a recap of Week 2 college football from the top 25 scores and to see how we did with our picks from last week. So let's take a look real quick at the scoreboard. You had Alabama rolling over Fresno State 41-10. Oklahoma surprisingly rolls over Ohio State in the upset 31-16. If you want to hear more about our reaction to that game, we both have done videos with in-depth analysis of that game. Be sure to look for those on our YouTube channel. Clemson squeaks by Auburn 14-6. That was a very close game. Penn State 33-14 over Pittsburgh, revenging their loss from last year. USC rolls over Stanford 42. I have 17. I think that was 28. 42-28. I think my score is wrong.
42-24.
42-24.
Yeah.
Washington easy win over Montana. Michigan 36-14 winners over Cincinnati. That game a lot closer than maybe the score indicates. Cincinnati played really good in that game. Wisconsin starts slow, but it eventually pulls ahead 31-14 over Florida Atlantic. We had a couple of games you can see here in the gray. Those are the games that were canceled because of Hurricane Irma striking Florida. So obviously no picks for or against on those games. Oklahoma State rolls easy 44-7 over South Alabama. LSU rolls over Chattanooga. Georgia comes back with a 1-point win over Notre Dame in the final seconds. Really thrilling game in South Bend for that one. Louisville, 47-35 winners over North Carolina. Jackson with 5 total touchdowns on the day for him. Virginia Tech, 27-0 over Delaware. Kansas State rolls over Charlotte. Washington State with a thrilling win over Boise State, 47-44. Boise State had that one wrapped up and just kind of blew it there at the end of the game. We'll talk about that in a moment. TCU, a 28-7 winner over Arkansas. Tennessee really obliterates Indiana State 42-7. And Purdue with the 44-21 win over Ohio. That was one of our picks. And you can see right now, Shaun was 20-1 for the week in his picks. I was 15-6. The only loss there that we both had was we both picked Stanford to beat USC, which didn't happen. For the year, Shaun is 41-4. I'm 34-11. So there you go. That's Week 2 college football. Some great games that took place. Obviously, Ohio State, Oklahoma. Everybody except this guy right here picked Ohio State. So Oklahoma comes in with the win. Like I said, take a look at our videos if you want to hear more about that. Shaun, let's start with Auburn and Clemson. I picked Auburn to win this game. I really thought Stidham would be enough. The game was really close, 7-6 for a while, but ultimately Clemson pulls out the win. What did you think about that game?
Well, it's a really close game. We're starting to see that the other Death Valley is a really tough place to go play. And we also saw that Clemson might have their quarterback. It was a closely contested game, but Oklahoma saw with last year, Auburn's got a really good defense, and then they've got Jarrett Stidham. He was sacked 11 times in this game.
I didn't realize that. I didn't get to watch it because of the other game I was watching. So.
Yeah, 11 times Stidham was sacked, and that's just amazing. That just goes to show Brent Venables just still knows what to do, knows how to put a defense together, and no surprise to me really with the score the way that it was. Low-scoring game. I did think that Clemson would be able to put a little bit more points on the board, but like I said before we picked that game, both teams are coming in. They're both breaking in newish quarterbacks. I think Clemson's quarterback is a junior maybe, and then Stidham's, I think, a sophomore or junior. So, close game. It was a really tight game, but Clemson's defense just taking care of business there.
Yeah, this is one of those where I love seeing really good teams playing this early in the season because that's the only way you really find out what a team has.
Yeah.
I didn't know about Clemson. I know they have a great defense. Wasn't really sure about their offense. I'm sold on Clemson now after this win because I know Auburn's a really good team, and I really thought Auburn would put more points on the board. I was a little surprised by that. I wasn't surprised it was a low-scoring game, but we'll see going forward. I still think Auburn is the team that's going to win the SEC. So.
It's kind of crazy that Auburn now has a passing quarterback, and I don't know how mobile he is. I didn't watch too much of that game. Again, of course, we had the other one on, but it seems like Gus Malzahn doesn't really his teams aren't as good if he doesn't have a mobile quarterback. Mm-hmm. seems like every time that they've had a national championship caliber team, they've had Cam Newton and then Nick Marshall, both very well at running the ball as well. So we'll see if Stidham can get better and they can win a few games in the SEC.
Let's go to Penn State gets revenge over Pittsburgh 33-14 at home. What do you think about that?
I wasn't really surprised with that. Penn State's turning into a really good team, and they've got a phenomenal quarterback, running back tandem there. So Oklahoma's seen what good quarterback and running back play has done in years past. So just not really surprised with that. They had revenge on their minds, and they got it.
Penn State, they really started rolling and gelling as a team about midway through the season after the Pitt game last year. They've just continued. They haven't lost a step from last year.
Yeah.
They're probably even better. Wasn't surprised at all. Pitt's not what they were last year, and I think Pitt got lucky last year by beating Clemson and beating Penn State. So not really surprised in that one. How about USC beating Stanford? I think we both were a little shocked by this one.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show that the national talking heads are probably right about Sam Darnold. I still want to see a little bit more to be able to claim them a top 5 team, but they've got a phenomenal running back. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I think Ronald Jones or something I forget. I'm terrible with names. But anyway, they were able to, kind of do enough to put Stanford's running game to a halt as much as they needed to. And then Sam Darnold just took it from there. And he's kind of showing the world that, there are other quarterbacks in the league other than Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. So
my 2 takeaways from this is, number 1, USC, we picked them in our preseason video pick to win the Pac-12. I think they're going to win the Pac-12. They're as good as what everybody says they are. Second takeaway, Western Michigan is a heck of a lot better than everybody gives them credit for. They're a MAC school, but they are pretty good, because now I don't think it was a fluke in week 1. I think that I think that game was close with USC because Western Michigan's a really good football team.
Yeah.
All right, so next game we're going to take a look at Cincinnati and Michigan. Okay, I'm going to start off with this one. Cincinnati was very competitive with Michigan going up there to the Big House. Luke Fickell's second game as a head coach at Cincinnati. Of course, he was defensive coordinator at Ohio State before taking that job. The game was pretty competitive, pretty close, but at the end of the day, you got in the second half. And what it comes down to is just you got athletes at Michigan. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, and that team has more depth than what Cincinnati has. And so a team like Cincinnati can hang with a team like Michigan for 3 quarters, and then they wear out, they run out of gas, and and that's what we saw in this game. I don't think it's any indication that Cincinnati's a bad team or that Michigan is a huge powerhouse. I just think that's the difference between a Big Ten and an AAC school.
Yeah, I kept telling you during the game, we were watching it together, and I kept leaning over to Mike saying, do they always get athletes like that? And they do get athletes. They get guys that may not have, made it as far as grades are concerned to those D1 schools, or they're just not as tall, because we do see a lot of times with defensive linemen, with linebackers, they're not really getting, unless they have superior talent, they're not getting those offers to the big D1 programs because they may be stuck at 6 foot. But they're still really good athletes. They're good football players. But yeah, Cincinnati had a heck of a D-line, and at least the front 7 that I saw, they just kept making plays. But Michigan is just too deep of a team to be able to withstand 4 quarters. So,
and ultimately, Michigan a lot better than I thought they would be preseason. So look out for them to do some good things. We're going to skip down to Georgia Notre Dame, 20-19. Georgia pulls off a stunner at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, just a great game in South Bend. Too bad we were watching the other game and couldn't really watch this one. So
I'm telling you, Jake Fromm is the real deal, and he'll be in a Heisman watch list here pretty soon if they ride him out the rest of the way. Because if he's a 3 or 4 year starter, being able to win the job away from a guy that got injured, watch out SEC, because Jake Fromm I think he's the real deal, and I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC.
Notre Dame is not the terrible team that they were last year. They're a really good football team. It's just Georgia's a little bit better.
Yeah.
So
and they pulled in an amazing recruiting class this last year. I think they had 9 guys playing on one of those All-American teams, and it shows when you recruit really, really well.
Notre Dame is not in the top 25 as of week 3, the standings that came out today, but they're going to be by the end of the year because they're going to win some more games and they're going to get back up in the top 25. Let's take a look. Louisville, North Carolina, 47-35 Louisville. Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's starting to get a little bit more. I saw some post-game on ESPN and everything, and they're starting to kind of recognize him, which it's dumb not to because he's the reigning Heisman winner. So. I think more and more he keeps doing that. They've got Clemson this next week.
Yes. That's the game of the week because
yeah.
Miami, Florida State has been postponed to October 14th because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
So now Clemson, Louisville is pretty much the marquee game of the week.
Yeah. We will see what happens there if Lamar Jackson can keep it going against stiff competition and see, if he can keep on a roll. That
game probably is going to decide the ACC Atlantic.
It could. Yeah.
So that's going to be pretty good. 5 touchdowns for Lamar Jackson after North Carolina. I forget who it was, but one of their defensive guys beforehand said, "Oh, he's not going to do anything. We're not going to let him do anything." And he torched him. So North Carolina, you're not even ranked in the top 25. I think you need to keep your mouth shut. Don't run your mouth against the reigning Heisman winner. All right. Let's briefly talk. I want to jump in here. Kansas State rolls over Charlotte 55-7. Now, Kansas State has not had any real top-level competition yet, but each of the first 2 games, they scored 55 points.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you're playing what some would call cupcakes, it's still pretty impressive offensive output.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Oklahoma State, they would be averaging the most points in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. You see half of the Big 12's already had a loss at least. And Jesse Ertz is a heck of a quarterback, and I think they're going to be one of those typical Bill Snyder teams that comes out and is a tough matchup. And Oklahoma has Kansas State in Lawrence this year, so that's going to look for that matchup to be pretty tough later on in the year.
We're going to have, in a separate video, we're going to have our picks for week 3, but I think it's Kansas State going to Vanderbilt this week.
Yep.
And Vanderbilt's 2-0.
Yeah.
And their offense is rolling.
Yeah.
So that could be a really good game. That's one I'm going to keep my eye on for next week. Okay. Obviously, Washington State comes from behind to beat Boise State. I mean, you talk about this was like the worst week for me. My picks went all haywire. Ohio State loses. I mean, that's why I'm wearing blue.
For me,
that's why I'm wearing blue. I'm just going to wear some blue and tick off some Ohio State people. I'm just tired. It was a terrible week. But this game here, this was one you picked Washington State and I picked Boise State, and I'm sitting here at the end of the night and I'm thinking, hey, I finally got one. Boise State's up big. It's like 4 minutes to go in the game. And then they, for whatever reason, they're throwing the ball instead of running out the clock, throw an interception. Next thing you know, this game's going to overtime. And when you know it, Washington State beats Boise State.
It just goes to show a Mike Leach coach team is still going to pass the ball more than they run, a lot more than they run. I think they passed for 60-plus times and only ran under 30 times. So, he's still showing that he can coach a team that just pretty much just passes the ball.
Yeah.
And they can still win big. I think I went to sleep by the time before that game even ended. So crazy finish there.
Man, I'm ready to get week 2 over with. Just forget about it. I'm done with it.
You'll get some this next week. You'll get some picks this next week.
Another game I missed on, TCU Arkansas. TCU 28-7 winner over Arkansas in Arkansas.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming. I thought Arkansas would be better, but I guess I shouldn't expect anything less from Brett Bielema because
they're not very good.
Yeah, they're not very good. And TCU,
I've seen Arkansas was one of those teams that I kind of grew up watching because I've got family from Arkansas, and I had family members that were constantly heartbroken because they just every once in a while they'd feel like they'd get a good team and then they just let them down.
Well, Arkansas's on my no-pick list now, so
yeah. I mean, we'll see.
Tennessee rolled, and then also the final one, a non-conference one that we picked, or a non-top 25. Ohio falls to Purdue 44-21. I did a reaction video on this that you can find on our YouTube channel as well, so I won't go into deep depth, but I'm going to say Purdue's offense, I watched the whole game on DVR, and I'm telling you, they just felt like it felt like I was watching Baylor from a few years ago when they could have been in the college football playoff. They just looked great.
Yeah.
I mean, incredible. But, and the score is not even – this is where I've said over and over and over, watch the games. Don't go by the stats and the final score, because if you actually watch this game, Ohio was very competitive. They were moving the ball.
Yeah.
Their defense was playing great. And what it boiled down to was 4 minutes to go in the first half. It's a 17-7 game. And Purdue does this like double reverse flea flicker to score. Ohio gets the ball, fumbles, leads to a field goal. Ohio gets the ball, they fumble a second time, and then Purdue gets it, scores a touchdown. Next thing you know, it went from 17-7 to 34-7 at halftime.
Yeah.
So you're not going to win a game turning the ball over like that when you're playing good competition.
Yeah.
So that's it for that. Some key games coming up next week. Let's go back to that scoreboard. Is Tennessee is going to be at Florida. Clemson will be at Louisville. As we mentioned, Miami and Florida State, that game's been moved to October 14th because of Hurricane Irma. And then Texas will visit USC. So that leads us to this. The new AP Top 25 came out today. Number 1 is Alabama. Oklahoma jumps up to number 2, followed by Clemson and USC. That would be, if the season were to end today, there's your college football playoff teams. Penn State's knocking on the door at 5, then Washington, Michigan. Ohio State falls to 8th. Personally, I felt like they should have been dropped to about 12th. Oklahoma State cracks the top 10 at number 9. Wisconsin comes in at 10, and then you can see there the rest of the list. Florida and Tennessee down there at 23 and 24. So your reaction to the new top 25?
I was really surprised with Oklahoma jumping up to number 2, because I felt like I know they're different teams, but Clemson they handle business at home. But once I kind of looked into it, Oklahoma beat a second-ranked team at their house, which is one of the toughest places to go play, and so I'm not surprised. I don't want this to go to their head, so I kind of wish they would have moved up a little bit slower, eked up there, but. You're going to see with Big 12 play and the national perception not being very good on Big 12, which I still think there's about 4 teams, 4 maybe 5 teams in the Big 12 that can be competitive and can kind of hold that up. To me, Texas doesn't have to be good. Oklahoma lost to Texas 2 years ago and still got into the playoffs, but.
Well, obviously they have Texas, which is close. I don't think it should be close this year, but Oklahoma doesn't really have any competition until October 21st when they play Kansas State.
Yeah, so they need to. What I'm saying is they need to bump up as fast as they can with that, because maybe you start seeing with these Big 12 games, they've got Baylor coming up, who started off 0-2. That's not going to be one of those wins that just shoots you up there in the polls. It would take a couple of losses for Oklahoma to move with that, but now you're looking at, with a loss to, if Alabama drops a game, Oklahoma could be sitting there at number 1, here pretty soon. If Alabama loses, not saying they will, because they look like a pretty complete team. Their quarterback's playing a lot better.
I feel like up until the Kansas State game, even if Oklahoma wins, they're not, even with an Alabama loss, I don't think they'll jump to number 1. I don't feel like. I think Clemson is so good.
Well,
they're right there.
You're starting to see even with these good teams that are losing, 2 other good teams, they're still dropping quite a ways. Florida State dropped quite a bit. Ohio State dropped quite a bit. By default, I do think that maybe somebody else jumps it. If they have a better win than Oklahoma that week, then maybe they jump up to number 1 and Oklahoma stays at number 2.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, let's take a hypothetical. Let's say Alabama lost this week, which they're not going to, but let's say they did lose in week 3. Oklahoma wins easily against Tulane, but then Clemson beats Louisville.
Right, and that's what I'm
saying.
They
could
would
jump up to 1.
They could, yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I guess I don't see a scenario where Oklahoma can get up to the number 1 spot until after the Kansas State game.
Yeah.
And assuming that Kansas State continues to win, and then OU wins that game pretty easily.
See, but we're thinking with logic and not
True.
not a whole lot does the committee think with logic.
Well, the committee, and this is the AP poll,
logic.
and this is the AP poll, and the committee doesn't have to go by that.
That's true.
So
That's true.
who
We'll
knows,
see week 7 when the actual CFP results come out. So
Ohio State drops to 8. Like I said, they just look terrible. that defensive line is not the best in the country. They're pretty good. They kept Oklahoma to 104 yards rushing total.
Man, Bosa and Hubbard,
they're
those
pretty
two guys.
good. But I mean, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they're not the best in the country. Our defensive backs are just. I'm not saying they're not talented, so don't take this wrong as saying that these guys stink or anything. They don't, but they're young, inexperienced, and they are not ready to play on this level.
They need some time. Yeah.
Basic coaching 101. I mean, when I coached defensive backs in high school. You run with the receiver. When the receiver looks back for the ball, you look back for the ball. You got to play the ball. You can't just be grabbing them, pushing into them, running into them. I mean, it's basic. It's basic defensive play.
Isn't that kind of funny? Because that was really the problem that Oklahoma defensive backs had last year when OSU came to Norman. They couldn't turn around, and they got Noah Brown had a highlight reel in that game just from that one game with defensive backs not turning around.
I mean, they got to go back to basics this week. I mean, Ohio State has an Army next week. They're going to beat Army, yes, but Army, they run the ball 66 times a game.
Yeah, they don't pass.
They don't throw the ball. I mean, their
front seven, the Ohio State front seven is still good enough to be able to shut the run down and besides Kyler Murray, Oklahoma didn't have a running back that averaged more than 4 yards a carry, or even broke 4 yards a carry. So they handled the run pretty good. It was just the pass on both sides of the ball because there wasn't a wide receiver that really stepped up and did anything.
I'm so sick of that offense. This is the third year in a row. That little run option with JT. I'm sick. We got Weber. You got J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
Put a damn fullback in there and line up in an eye and just run the ball. I mean, just run it.
Yeah,
I'm sick of this crap that playing games and trying to fling it out to the outside to receivers. Just stop it. Be Ohio State. Line up, smash them in the mouth, and run the stinking football.
See, and that's what I don't remember seeing one bubble screen pass, and no offense, but to anybody who doesn't understand that, that's just where the quarterback turns and throws the ball straight down the side, down the line of scrimmage straight to a wide receiver, and then he's probably got one or two wide receivers blocking for him. Kevin Wilson ran that ad nauseum at Oklahoma, and I don't remember seeing that one time.
No, but we don't have any other than Paris Campbell. And I don't like those bubbles. I hate them because the quarterback turns, and as soon as he turns and the receiver steps back, the defensive back, the corner sees it automatically. And by the time the ball gets there, unless you got a guy who's going to make the guy miss, I see 2-yard losses. When they run
actually,
that stuff.
I do remember.
I hate that.
I do remember seeing one, and I think one of our defensive backs just blew up the.
The only way that works. The only way that works is if it's your slot or your H back who's popping back, getting the pass, and your other wide receiver is out there blocking.
Yeah.
And if you don't have good wide receivers who can block, that stuff never works.
Yeah.
And right now, none of the wide receivers at Ohio State have proven to me that they're capable of that stuff.
You got to have like a D.D. Westbrook or a Curtis Samuel to be able to. And this Paris Campbell, I know he's fast. We saw that he was fast with running that kickoff return back. But he just didn't look explosive. You can be fast, but if you're not a playmaker, it doesn't matter. I mean,
well, we'll see what happens. I mean, Ohio State's got a lot of work to do, obviously. So that's about it from here. So we've went over the top 25. We've went over the recap of week 2. It's on to week 3, and we'll see what happens. Stay with us. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube and look for our predictions for week 3. It will be coming up as well. So for Mike, I'm Shaun.
I'm Shaun.
You're Mike. Shaun. I'm Mike. This
game has had
week 2's done. Week 2 done. Let's get it out of here.
You've been in the Red Zone.